So last week in the podcast, we were talking about Westport and we're talking about Croagh Patrick. And Eric, you were saying how difficult it is for the going up Croagh Patrick and back down again. And the man who we have as a guest in the podcast is smiling because he knows exactly where I'm going with this. He set the world record in June 2022 for going up and down that 15 times in 24 hours. So, Eric, I don't know what you were complaining about. Ricki, Wynne, welcome to the Any Given Runday podcast. How are you keeping?
All right, boys. Thanks for having me. Yeah. I won't forget going up and down Croagh Patrick for a while. That's for sure.
I was just watching that again. There's a YouTube video we'll have linked into our stories where Run on the Ricki it's called, where you did that over 24-hour period. And at one stage, like, the weather's not that great, and you could barely see you or hear you with the wind and the rain and all coming in. Unbelievable achievement. Fair play on that one.
Cheers. Cheers. Yeah. Look, it was something. I set my goal on raising money for motor neuron disease early in the year. I wanted to do something for charity. I wasn't sure what to do, and like I'd been up and down the Ricki so many times, and that conversation happened like in my in-laws' house. Where how many times do you actually think you can go up and down Croagh Patrick? And I was thinking, I don't know. Like I reckon I'd be able to go up and down 10 times, And then I set about challenging myself and then setting, trying to find out who had the record on it. And I found out there was a couple of lads that went up and down at 12 times in 24 hours back in 2011. And I got in touch with some of them lads, and they were kind enough to give me information, give me what route they took and all sorts of stuff like that. And then I just took it on. And honest to God, lads, like I had a perfect day. I know the weather wasn't great, but I think it looked worse than it was because it didn't feel like it was that bad. Like I went for a run today and it was way worse than when I went up and down Croagh Patrick,
It was absolutely unbelievable.
It's definitely something that'll have to change as well. If put steps in at the top now, Ricki, I reckon you could get 70 next year.
Do you know that the steps were they were working on the steps while I was doing it, and I had like on some of my training runs I saw they had to use the steps, and I was thinking, look, I'm not going to use the steps anyway because the steps weren't there when the other lads did it, and I wanted to kind of go on the same route that they were going, which would have been the route that I would have been going anyway, because that's just the way you go when you're going up and down Croagh Patrick. But every now and again I'd slip over and I'd use the steps, and for whatever, going up the steps, coming down the steps is horrible.
It's lethal.
They're very unnatural, and you don't get a rhythm, you don't get a flow when you're going down the hill like you would going down using the mountain, using the scree, So I wouldn't have went down on the steps anyway. Like I think I would have clocked myself.
But you go down I've seen it like on the videos, like I did the 80k EcoTrail, and the very first time I ever seen it was I had done 30k, the first time doing that long, and I was heading in towards Roundwood, and I was feeling good that this was the first time doing that, getting that distance. And you were coming back up the hill going faster than I was going down the hill, which means you were bombing down those hills. And like I was like, so you'd obviously done 50k by my maths at that point, and you were flying through it. And I seen people that day bombing it down the hills. What's going through your mind at this stage? Like going down, like it doesn't look like you guys have a care in the world the way you're flying down these mountains. It's unbelievable. Is it a skill? Is it just switch off, hope for the best? Like what's your thought process doing that?
Fear. And it's fear of being caught. That's what it is. Like usually, like I'm looking behind me going, that fella's gaining on me, so I got to get off this mountain quicker than he gets off it, And honestly, like I don't really think about it. Like it's like people say, like, what are you doing? Is it because your hands are out wide? And like there is certain techniques you're using, but I just think that coming down a hill, you need to be nice and relaxed. And you just got to go with it, and don't overthink it. Like if you're overthinking it, you're going to fall, you're going to be unfocused and stuff like that. I just think you just go with it. Let your body take you down. Like let gravity take you down, and try and have as much fun as you can, because I mean, it's pretty hard to go up some of these hills, so you better have fun going down them,
That is true.
I've even found, and sometimes Ricki, and obviously you've more. We'll talk about some of the achievements you've done even over the last year. But do you find even coming down the hills more taxing sometimes on the body than going up?
Definitely. Like when you're coming down fast for a long period of time, like your quads are getting smashed, and your quads are the biggest, I think, component to your legs to keep you moving forward. And when your quads are smashed, it's very hard to keep running fast. It's very hard to get the power in through the legs and everything like that. Whereas when you're going uphill, sometimes I love to see a hill coming because I can actually get a bit of a break from running, from smashing my quads, from okay, the calves are getting it on the way up, but I think it's a lot less taxing on the way up, especially in ultras, because you're not running super, super fast. It's not like a VK where you're going all out. You're trying to run efficiently. But when you're bombing it down a hill, it's very hard to run efficiently, because if you take your foot off the gas too much, then you're putting the brakes on. And the more you put the brakes on going down a hill, the harder it is on your legs. It's like it's more pounding.
No, makes perfect sense. Going up those hills, I see you're a fan of using the trekking poles, and like when it was my first EcoTrail, I was like, I hadn't heard too much about them. I didn't know as much. I had heard that you need technique to use them right. It's like, I'm not going to use that. These guys are not going to use that. But a lot of you do use the trekking poles. How much of an advantage is using those poles, and is there a certain technique to them?
Yeah, again, depends on the race, right? If it's something like EcoTrail with 2,600 meters of climbing, I'm not going to use trekking poles, because I think I can run all those kind of hills in Wicklow and stuff like that. But if you go to somewhere like Donegal to do Seven Sisters, where you have 4,300 meters of climbing in a 50K race, it's definitely a lot more efficient to use the poles. So it's look, they call them cheat sticks for a reason sometimes, and it definitely does take the pressure off your legs, because your arms and your shoulders are doing a lot of the work. So if you can get your upper body to bring you up the hill, that means that your legs aren't as wrecked when you've got to start running. So they are a massive advantage, especially like in the 100K distance or something like that. I like in CCC in France or TDS or any of those kind of races. Like, I think if you're rocking up to those without trekking poles, you're in for a very hard day, I think.
They're like the alpha flies and mountain running. But
Yeah.
can I ask you a question? I suppose we've dived straight into a world record, but where did this start for you? Because one thing for me is I see a hill, I'm like, oh no. How did you develop this want for being a mountain goat, I suppose?
Yeah, that's a good one. Like I think I'm 6, maybe 7 years now doing this. And like when I first started it, it was like I'd moved from playing football, and then I wanted to do an ultra. I did a little bit of OCR, obstacle course racing, did a bit of that and loved that. And then I moved into I just did an event that was 12 hours long. I thought it was unreal, the fact that I ran for 12 hours. So then I wanted to do an ultra. So I had never ran an official 10K race, never ran a half marathon, never ran a marathon, and then entered a 50K road race, kind of like in a forest, like a forest kind of a trail race, but it was flat, super flat. And I did well in that, whatever, whatever. And then I signed up for something like Gale Force Mountain Race, which was only a 22K or 25K mountain race. And I think I ended up coming fourth in it. And that was my very first trail race. But I mean, I was hooked straight away. I was thinking, wow, this is just unbelievable. Like, and I mean, it was a horrific day. I remember it well. It was lashing rain, wild windy, complete swamp up in Connemara. But I loved it. I just thought, this is what I've been looking for. It's just a different challenge. And then over the years, I just found that I was pretty good going uphill. I was pretty good going downhill. I was pretty good running as well on the flats. So I thought that with the right training, I could be pretty good at this sport. So and it just grew from there, lads.
You say pretty good, but I go a step beyond that, Ricki, because you kind of brushed over the Seven Sisters there. You won that event last year, the 55K. I've heard people talk about that being like one of the most, like, I've heard there's longer events like the 80K EcoTrail, stuff like that, but because the elevation stuff, that's one of the most grueling events in the country.
Yeah, like, I would even say that the 30K and the 55K are two of the hardest races you'll do in Ireland. Like, if you were to ask me what I would advise someone to do for their first ultra, even though that's a 30K and Kerry Light is a 60K, I'd say do the 60K, because the 30K is that hard. Like, the terrain is brutal. The climbs are brutal. The descents are brutal. They just smash it up. And it's only 30K. And I reckon, like, for beginners, you would have more, like, you would sort of have more grow for the sport after doing 60K than 30K in the Donegal Mountains, because they are tough. That's tough terrain. And the 55K race, one that I would say that it's one of the toughest races in Europe, like, not just Ireland. Like, I'd say there's very few races with that distance that have that much elevation. Like 4,300 meters of climbing in 50K it's bonkers. It's an insane race.
Constant up and down. Yeah, it sounds incredibly taxing on the body. But then you also did, I'm going to pronounce this wrong, the Maurice Mullins 80K as well then, and that led into, you won that, and that led into the CCC from there, was it? Or the World Trail Championships?
No, I would say so. The Maurice Mullins was the trials race for the long distance World Mountain Running Championships in Austria. So that was it. It was top 4 got selected, but and like that, I would have been really happy with 4th, 3rd, 2nd, or 1st, you know. But it just worked out on that day. I had a really good day, and I ended up winning it in, I don't know, 6 hours and 56 minutes. And like, I was kind of aiming for, the qualifying time was 7 hours and 15 minutes. So I was really happy. I just had a really good day, a really good training block, and everything just went well that day, you know.
Going back to your training block, Ricki, like I see, like, one of the questions I get asked me, people like yourself and endurance runners on the podcast, and after I always get to ask this question, and they're like, oh, they've all day to do that. Like, they must have a cushiony job, or their job is to do running. Like, you have a very taxing job. Like, you work in construction, so it's not like you're sitting on a desk all day, and then you're running in the morning, you're running in the evening. Does your training block have to go on field, with some days being harder than others, or how do you approach, or do you just gradually increase your mileage, or how do you approach your training?
Yeah, that's exactly what I do. Is I go by feel, because I know I have to do certain workouts during the week. That's me. I'm self-coached, and I know that I need to do 1 or 2 sessions. So one session is usually a speed session on the roads, and then I'll always do a sort of a interval kind of a session on the hills at the weekends. Now that's usually done like almost like a progression run, where I just feel my way into that run, and then I knock off some kilometer repeats, maybe 2K repeats, something like that. Maybe I just use the hills kind of like a fartlek session. I kind of mix it up and play around with it and have the fun with it, because, you know, it has to be fun for me to keep doing it week in, week out. But I go completely off feel. Like, I have a heart rate monitor on my watch on my wrist, and I keep an eye on it, but I'm not worried about it too much, you know, as long as it's not 180 beats a minute when I'm running at 5-minute kilometers. I know I'm okay, you know. But I'd say, oh, well, I'm going to do this session on Wednesday, but then Wednesday I go to work and I'm swinging over roof for 10 hours, and I'm absolutely banjaxed going home in the van. Like, that session is out. I'm not doing that session on Wednesday. And maybe I don't do it Thursday, but I might do it Friday, I might do it Saturday. I'll always get it done, but I have to go and I have to listen to my body. It's just something I've got very good at over the years, is I'm very in tune with my own body and what I need to get fit and how I need to recover as well.
And we found a lot of times with people, and even myself doing a training plan, people always ask if they miss a training session. Oh, do I do that again tomorrow? Or do I add that on tomorrow? Or when do I do this? Like, that flexibility is what makes it a lifestyle, isn't it?
Exactly. Like, if I was getting pissed off with every session that didn't go to plan, I'd be angry all the time. Whereas I'm very relaxed in how I go about it. I think for me as let's say I'm an endurance athlete, right? I don't like calling myself that, but that's what I am. I run long distances. So I don't have to obsess about speed the way a track runner would, the way a 5K runner would, the way a 10K runner would. So I can afford to do a lot more easy running, you know, and worry about my volume, because I know that that's getting me fit. And then I can always sprinkle back in that speed work the closer I come to a race. And that way I'm not stressing about hitting those workouts every single week. I'm more worried about that I'm getting the right amount of volume, I'm getting the right amount of time on legs throughout the training block. And then I can always sprinkle in like a couple of faster sessions here, there, a couple of hill sessions here and there. And then I'll always know that I'm in a good place.
Do you do any cross training, Ricki, or is it all running on the legs?
To be honest, it's nearly all running the legs. And then after some races, I'll get on the bike and I'll kind of like ease my way back into it. But I'm a fair weather cyclist. I'm terrible. Like, I'll be the first to admit, it's like, I think there's nothing more miserable than cycling in the rain, lads. It's horrible. Like,
there you went. Yeah, two people already converted to that.
Yeah, my hat goes off to anyone. Like, I was heading for Sligo this morning, and there was a guy coming towards me. And I mean, lads, I could hardly see him. The rain was that heavy, and I was thinking, mate, would you not be better off just coming with me and running in the mountains? It's way easier, you know.
It's definitely something that I just find the most miserable, and it's so hard to warm up. That I'm a fair weather everything now. I probably wouldn't even join you on the mountain in the rain now. To be
yeah, well, I don't know, whatever it is. Like when you're running, like I'm greedy for running miles, if you know what I mean. Like, it's like, even though I know that cycling the bike is probably going to keep my fitness the same as if I was running, in my head, I still think that I need to be running to be better at running. I know there's loads of people out there that say, oh, you can cross train and you can take the load off your legs and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, but for me, for my own sake, I like to see those stats. I like to see my volume for the year all in running, and it just makes me a lot more confident when I'm standing on the start line.
That you have that extra miles in the legs, that you're like, I know when you're struggling, you know, you've been there. How much does that is there a mental approach to what you do in these long distance runs where you're out there, like you said, 7-8 hours? Is it just fitness, go, or are you constantly talking to yourself to keep going? Or how do you mentally approach these races?
I break it down. Like, the way I do it is I don't overthink the distance. So what I do is normally I sign up to a race, and I've done this from day one. Where I sign up to a race, and then I go online and I find out the winning time for that previous year. And then I just say, well, that's his average pace that was a 70K race. Let's say it's a 70K race. I go, that's his average time for that. So I just need to be quicker than that. And I have a good chance of winning that race. So then in my training, I do a load of work at those paces, you know, so that I kind of know, then I have a fair idea that come race day, I could pretty much run 70K at that pace, and maybe even a little bit quicker if everything goes to plan and I get food into me, I do this, I do that, you know, if the weather's good, if little things go my way, I can be pretty confident that I can hold those paces. And you only get that confidence from training. And, you know, so I'm always saying keep showing up, right? But I mean, I'm genuinely putting in the work. Otherwise, I'm fooling myself, right?
Yeah.
I'm putting in the work and I'm saying, well, I've done that. I've went on recce's. I've checked out the course and I've hitting those splits. I'm hitting those targets that guy hit when he won. So there's no reason I can't win this race.
You must spend a lot of time training on your own, because like this conversation, you go, Eric, do you want to come for a run? I'm like, no, you're all right, Ricki.
Yeah, but I think for a lot of maybe it's a little bit different in road running, because I see there's more clubs and groups setting up now, and they're kind of nearly like little teams, and there's 10 or 12 lads, and they're running around Dublin, and I'd be jealous of them, kind of going, man, I wish I had a little club like that it'd come with me. But at the same time, I love training on my own. You know, I love just putting in the headphones and just doing my own thing, and nobody's telling me what to do. Nobody's telling me I need to pick up the pace. Nobody's telling me I need to slow down. So I do love those kind of training sessions. But I also have a few lads that every now and again I run with them, and these are lads that are in the same race as me that I'm competing against. They're like Gavin Byrne, Keith Lane, boys like this that I'm probably going to have to work very hard to beat them on race day. But I get to train with these guys as well. And like, as that old saying, iron sharpens iron. You know, it's a great place to be and be able to train with some of these guys.
And that's something we've always said is like, in order to see good improvement and stuff I've seen in younger years through sport was play with better people. And you always get there. And that's just one thing I suppose you've already alluded to, is saying you set the splits for yourself, and that's what keeps you honest in your program. And that's what keeps you, because I suppose, like playing Gran Turismo and you see the ghost car in front of you, that's you trying to be better, I suppose. And that's all you kind of have when you're going running over a mountain on your own.
Yeah, like even there, this weekend was a funny one. It's like at the minute, right, because I had the injury over in France. I had a small injury, and then I'm building back up. So I'm building back up, and I'm like, this week I'll have 120 kilometers with maybe 2,600 meters of climbing done this week. But I did 2 runs there back to back. And during those runs, I did not feel great. I didn't feel great. Like, I was like going, yeah, I don't feel as fit as I was earlier in the year. But then when I finished those runs and I look back at them and I see my times and I see my splits, I'm running faster than I was back in March. And I'm going, back in March, I thought I was fitter than I ever was. And right now, I feel like I'm not fit at all. But yet, I'm quicker than I was in March. So, like, running is crazy, man. And fitness is crazy. And it doesn't matter how fit you get, you never think you're that fit. Like, there's always a little hamster somebody upstairs saying, no, you need to do more. You need to do more. You're not in great shape yet, or, you know, and you're always fighting with those little demons in your head or something like that. I don't know, you know.
Yeah, that is mad. How do you stop yourself then from going, I need to get a 3rd run in or a 4th run in, and like building up, keep building? Like, I suppose overtraining. Do you find that's the thing with you? Yeah,
well, like a couple of years ago, I thought the only way that I'm going to get better is by running more, and I was seeing like the pros all trying to hit 160k, so 100-mile weeks, you know. But like, they don't do what I do for a living, and after a while, it's not that I was getting injured; it was just that I was getting super tired, super fatigued, and I just didn't see any improvements in what I was doing. So then I decided, do you know what, Rick? You need to listen to yourself. You need to figure out that you're actually working pretty hard Monday to Friday, and then you're training this, that, and the other. So now I've kind of found that sweet spot, especially over the last maybe 3 years, where I kind of know that if I run between 120 and 135 or 40k, something like that, with maybe 3,500 meters of climbing, that's my sweet spot. And I don't need to do any more than that. And then I could sit on that for weeks and weeks and weeks. And I'll always have energy. I'll always have power. I'll always have no niggles, no injuries. Because, like, boys, I don't stretch. I don't foam roll. I don't do anything like that. I just run. But I've just got so good at knowing when I'm doing too much that I just take it off a notch, dial it back a notch, find that sweet spot, and then everything just clicks. Like, I never, like, people say, geez, you know, you're supposed to be in pain after doing all this training. You're not. I think if you're in pain all the time, you're doing something wrong, you know, and you shouldn't be in pain all the time.
Is that knowing from pushing yourself too far? Do you find you have to get that point to go, there's my limit, now I need to pull back?
Yeah, 100%. Look, when you were a kid and your dad, and you bought your first car, and your dad or somebody was telling you, You need to slow down in that car. You need to do this in that car. You don't listen to that person until you have your first crash or something like that. You know, and I'm the worst in the world for when I first started running. I thought the only way to get fast is by just running fast all the time. And like I've said this in other podcasts where I was training for my very first ultra. I was running 22K every day at 4 minutes per kilometer every single day, 7 days a week. That's all I was doing because I thought that's the only way I'm going to get fast and I'm going to get fit, you know. And that's how I was doing it. And I was doing that for 2 years. And then all of a sudden, bang, everything, every tendon in my body decided, no, we can't keep doing this, you know. And I had tendonitis in my knees, I had tendonitis in my hamstrings, I had tendonitis everywhere, you know. And then I had to just go back nearly to square one, build it all back up again, get strength training, get doing everything like this until I finally figured out, you know, I need to start asking, I need to start looking for help. It's not that I have anyone coaching me, but I'm not afraid to ask for help and ask people that are a lot smarter than me at the time. Like, you know, what do I need to be doing? Because what I'm doing at the minute isn't working. I'm getting injured all the time because I was overtrained.
Finally pull back and keep that going again. It's an interesting point you had on your story. I think it was on Instagram this week or last week, your reels. And I'm noticing myself that it seems like every couple of weeks, like if you take, for example, Keith Russell, who does the backyard ultras, a new world record was set there. I think someone set a new world record for 24 hours. Constant running, a new distance time. I can't remember off the top of my head. Does that inspire you, or be like you feel like you're getting to a certain point and all of a sudden the bar just keeps getting set higher and higher? Because this is all relatively new, like the last, I don't know, 10, 20, 30 years, maybe. Some of these, like, you wouldn't have heard people doing many 100K runs a couple of years ago, and all of a sudden more and more people are doing it now. Like you talked about in that reel, like you wouldn't have heard that many people doing sub 3 hour in a marathon, yet more and more people are doing that. Does that inspire you, or is that like, oh my God, now I thought I was doing enough to get to here, now I have to get even higher now? Like, because your standard keeps going up and up and up, and all of a sudden it's like, shit, it has to be more. Like what you're doing now would have been maybe, you know, a certain standard a couple of years ago, where it's less now because of how high that bar is getting.
Yeah, but I think it's brilliant. I think it's brilliant for the sport. Yes, it makes it a hell of a lot harder for someone like me. Like, boys, I think I turn 41 on Tuesday. Like this coming Tuesday, I'm turning 41, and like I'm looking at these young lads coming up behind me, and they are just hammering out the runs at the minute. They're, you know, like I think 3 hour marathon now, most lads are banging out 3 hour marathons. So I'm like going, well, that's only going to transfer into the trails, you know, and trail running is getting faster and faster and faster and faster. But a part of me is like, jeez, oh man, I need to get, you know, it's hard work, right? I gotta keep improving. But at the same time, isn't it a great way of getting yourself motivated? It's like, look, what are you going to do? Are you going to just quit, or are you just going to keep working? And like, I'm just going to keep working until the legs fall off, you know?
Brilliant. On that, and keep on working and stuff, you talked about sacrifices, stuff you made recently. One of them, and I've been following your content for a good 2 years, and the very first time I heard it, you're a vegan.
Yeah.
Is that because of performance in the last couple of years, or has that always been the case?
No, like that, like look, I would eat cardboard if I thought it would make me run faster. That's the long and the short of it. It's not like I'm out here saving the world by being vegan. I tried everything. Like I was keto for a while. I was high carb. I was high protein, low this, high this, low that. I tried them all, and some of them worked really well for a while, and then it kind of just sort of, your body just get used to it, and then I was seeing no more improvements. And then I saw so much, and I read so much about the vegan diet, and I saw, especially for recovery, and I just was saying, right, sure, look, I'll give it a go and see what happens. And almost from like day one, I felt, yeah, I could do this, and it was very easy for me to go and use that diet on a daily basis. And like 5 years later, like I think vegan 5 years last month. You know, I wasn't keeping score, but I just remember somebody asked me, and I was thinking, I think I'm 5 years since last month, and it's just something that I've really enjoyed it, and I love not being able to eat some things. Like I love having that where if I walk into a shop and there's a load of cakes there, well, I can't have them. They're not vegan, so I can't have them. So it makes it a lot easier to cut shit out, you know. So if I can't have it, I can't have it. You know, that's just it. It's just not vegan. I can't eat it. But then as well, like I do feel super healthy. My body clock is, I mean, it's I have the best body clock in the world. For the minute I wake up, everything works really well, if you know what I mean, right? Everything works really well. And I just feel really good all the time. Like I'm talking to you now, and there's like an energy about me, right? But that's always there. Like I'm always high energy. I'm always in a good mood. I'm never hangry. I'm never fucking hungry. It's just like I think it works really well for me. But I know that it doesn't work well for everybody. So you'll never see me banging on about, oh, I think everyone should be vegan, because I think that's wrong, because I know that my younger brother tried it and for some reason it just didn't work for him. He was really low on energy, really low on power. It was as if his body was craving iron and meat, and he just went back to it. And since he went back to meat, he saw a huge improvement. So it's not a one size fits all. You know, it's if you want to be vegan. But I'm saying, like, if you're doing it for sport, you need to know if that's working for you. If it's not working for you, then it's not working for you.
And it is something we found with certain athletes who've written books and stuff about you need to be a vegan and stuff. And it's just like, yeah, I can understand that whole element of finding out what works for you. And part of and what you've said is one of the key attractions to the vegan side or the keto is you tend to cut away a lot of the processed foods, the stuff that's going to make you feel lethargic, and you're getting clean eating all the time. You're not having the cakes, because post race now I'm straight after a cake and ice cream, the whole shebang. But it's one of those things that I have noticed when you eat a bit cleaner, you fuel the jet a little bit more efficiently. You know, your body is using those a little bit better, and that routine about food and training is amazing, whatever it is you choose. But figuring that out takes a little bit of time, doesn't it?
Definitely, yeah, definitely. Like that, I tried everything. Like I'll tell you a good one. Like when I went keto, I ate now. I'll explain it this way. I'm the most boring person on the planet when it comes to food. If something works, then I keep doing it. And I do the same thing every day. Like right now, after this podcast, I'm going to go downstairs. I'm going to have a big, massive bowl of vegetables with a bit of falafel and a pile of hot sauce. That's it. And that's every single day, every single evening. It's the same dinner every day. Same dinner every day. But when I was keto worked really well for me for a long time, until I start going over 100 kilometers in races. And then my body started craving sugar. And I think, well, if my body's craving sugar, then this diet is not working. You know, I shouldn't be craving sugar. And people are saying, oh, but you need to put carbohydrates in. But if I'm talking about having a high fat diet, I shouldn't be needing carbohydrates. So I just thought, it's not really working for me. You know, it's like I'm craving this sugar. And then when I put the sugar in, I was getting sick. And I was getting violently sick for like 3-4 hours in a race. And yeah, you could suffer through and you could finish the race, but long term, that's not good. Like I can't be doing that all the time. But on that, right? On that about being this boring guy that eats the same thing every day. I ate chili. So a bowl of chili, right? Just chili every single day for 120 days in a row. Hey, you know, so that's what you're talking to. You're talking to the guy that when something works, I keep doing it. I keep doing it and doing it and doing it until it doesn't work. And then when it stops working, I'll find something else.
I can't wait to see the day you release your own cookbook for success. It's like 2 pages long.
Only 4 pages.
Yeah. There'll be one for the meat lovers and one for the vegans. That'll be it. Like a bowl of chili or a bowl of veg, one or the other.
You mentioned. Oh, go ahead, Eric.
Sorry, when you go to events and obviously being vegan and stuff, do you ever find it difficult that this event has been fueled by X, or do you always carry your own nutrition, that it's never an issue for you?
Yeah, I usually carry my own, but in fairness, like most races now that you go to, especially abroad or anywhere like that, they are nearly all vegan. And a lot of the, like we'll say, the gels and the drink mixes and stuff like that, nearly, I would say like 90% of those are actually all vegan now. Like when I was over in Chamonix for CCC, this main sponsor was NAC, and NAC are a Canadian brand, and everything they had was plant-based. Same, I was in Oslo for the EcoTrail, and they were using a certain fuel. It was all plant-based. So I think 90% of them are plant-based now, you know.
France, CCC, for those that don't know, what is it?
Yeah, so CCC is part of the UTMB World Series, where it's basically like the World Cup of trail running. That's kind of the best way of explaining it. It's like there's 25 races in the year where you can qualify by doing those races, getting stones, and then you go into a lottery to get a place in the CCC or UTMB, and OCC is the shorter one. But it's pretty much the World Cup of trail running. So that's where like you end up on the start line with the best runners in the world.
When you have the picture of your Instagram, you're there with those elite races before that. Was that your goal that got you out running when you want to get running? Is that like, was that the race that you had to get into?
Yeah, that was the race that like I tried to get into that race for about 5 years, you know, because people think that it's really hard to get into UTMB races now because you have to go and get stones. But it was even harder, because now if you get enough stones and you don't get in this year, you'll get in next year. Like you'll definitely get in next year. That's the way it works. Whereas before it was always a lottery. So you could be years trying to get into it, you know, and you still had to go and do 2 races every year that got you a certain amount of points to get you into those races. So you kept having to do all these races. It was like your points weren't stored the way your stones are stored, you know. So it's a lot. I think it's a lot easier to get into. The only difference is now is that all the races that have stones are abroad, so that just means it's more expensive, you know. Like, none of these races are cheap. I think CCC was like €250 to enter that race. Like, but like I'm very lucky that Hoka, like the brand Hoka, they sponsor me, so I get into those events for free. I still have to qualify for them, but once I get into them, like I get my race entry for free, like as long as Hoka sponsor the event.
But you're still got like when you were doing that one, weren't you over there a good 20-30 days or something in Europe beforehand training for it? Like it's like absolutely insane commitment to this thing.
Yeah, and in a tent. So people forget that I was in a tent.
I forgot that part.
Yeah. Because a lot of people said, "Geez, how did you manage to work that you were 30 days?" I was 30 days there before the race, and like I was living in a tent at the bottom of a mountain, and it was costing me about €12 a night, like, you know. So that's how I could do it. If I was staying in an Airbnb, there's no way I would have been able to afford to do that, like, you know. So I just took that sacrifice. And look, I was blessed with the weather. I think I got 2 days of rain in the whole 30 days that I was there. So it was perfect. Just waking up every day at the bottom of a mountain, looking up at a glacier, and then it was so easy. Everyone thinks, "Oh, he was banging out." I think I ran 212 kilometers with 12,000 meters of climbing in 1 week, and people were thinking that was hard. That was easy because I didn't have to go to work. I didn't have to
work. And you woke up at the start line.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and I mean, when you're there, it's you know, and the only thing I have to do throughout the day is go for a run. That's the dream, lads. You know.
Yeah, it's mad because like as your Instagram's growing with all the races and stuff you're doing, and you're constantly keep showing up, and you see sometimes the comments or other people talking about you get obviously these days when you hear endurance race, these mad things, everyone talks about the likes of David Goggins and stuff, but you're really polar opposites. Like, you do with a smile on your face all the time. Like, I know he loves it, but he talks about the suffering and stuff like that, but you haven't really talked about that in this podcast or at all. Do you find it's harder to keep, do you see that message being cross-wired a few times, and you get that relationship with Goggins where you're like, no, I'm just ads, I'm waking up the start line for a race, let's go running, this is a great thing, instead of going through that suffering all the time, the pain locker?
Yeah, like, don't get me wrong. Sometimes it's very hard. Of course, it's very hard. Like, if it was easy, I don't know. Sure, but like, I love the sport. I love doing this. Like, on my days off, all I want to do is go training. I love training every day. If you said to me you don't have to go to work and you can run for 8 hours a day, I do that every single day, and I do it with a smile on my face because that's what I want to do. Like, you know. And sometimes, yeah, there is days where it's not great and it's miserable outside, or it's cold and it's wet and it's windy and it's hard. And I can be a little bit grumpy every now and again and shout into the Instagram thing and be telling people showing up. But I still love the sport, and I only want to do this sport, you know, and I only want to get better and better and better. And I want to bring everyone along with me as well and show them that anyone can do this. You know, if I can do it, anyone can do it, you know.
People listening to this now, and you talked before about how hard Donegal and stuff is, they want to get into trail running. Is there any particular trails events throughout the country that you would recommend, or is there any trail events that don't get talked about enough that you have done? You're like, more people should be doing this event.
Yeah, not so much event, but I think that IMRA, so Irish Mountain Run Association, is one that I'm not sure, like, even though it is the Irish Mountain Run Association, it's not widely known by everybody. You know, people that hear of Kerry, which is great, and they hear of the Seven Sisters race and stuff like that. But IMRA are very good at putting on, like, very, very short 8 to 10 to 12K races. They put them on most weeknights, you know, stuff like that, around Leinster and Munster. And it's just a great way for people to get into it. And it's very, very cheap. You just sign it. I think it's €10 at the start of the year. And every race you might pay €6 or €7 for some races. I think the dearest race in the whole year is like Maurice Mullins, where it's like €60 or something like that, you know, which is savage value for money. Like, so it's a great place to start, is IMRA. So IMRA, people check that out. They'll see events all over the country, like, because they're even after starting up a league right beside me in Sligo in the northwest. So, like, it's nearly all over the country at the minute. And then other races, I'd say, is like Kerry Way Light for beginners. I just think it's a great race. It brings huge crowds of people down. There's a great buzz around it. It's a great weekend. It's usually in September as well, which means that we get our summer in September, I think. So it's a great time of the year, you know. And then you have Seven Sisters as well for other people. I think Seven Sisters is a fantastic race. And even though I know I said it's one of the most brutal races, it's one of those that I'm telling you, when you finish that race, you've earned whatever it is you want after that. If you want ice cream, you want pizza, you'll have earned that pizza, man, you know.
You feel like you've done something. And it's one thing as well, I suppose, like you've said, you never got into the 5-10K half marathon. You went straight for it. And it's one thing people say about trail runs, and a lot of the memes you'll see is once you convert from road running to trail running, it's very hard to go back because of the scenery, because of your watch may or may not work. You just have to keep going type thing and take it all in. Would you ever consider the likes of a marathon now as even an interest to you, or is it just always a trail?
No, definitely. Like, cause like I am a trail runner, right? But like 80% of my training is done on the road because of where I live. So, like, where I live, literally less than 500 meters away from me is the Blue Way. So the Blue Way is like the green ways in some places. We just call it the Blue Way here. and it's right along the canal. I have no cars, no traffic, no nothing, no one or two junctions that I have to cross. But I mean, I can go from 5K, 10K, all the way up to nearly 35K if I want in certain loops here, there, and everywhere. But it's all on road, which is fine, because in Ireland, I think that if you enter a trail race, at some point you're going to have to run on the road. And there's nothing worse than coming down off a lovely green, grassy, soft bit of ground and then hitting the road. When you hit the road, your legs just go flat. And that's what I found when I first got into trail running. It's like the minute I hit the roads, my legs went flat. So I realized from very early on that I need to get good at running on the roads if I'm going to like do well in some of these trail races. So you still need a mix of both, you know. And in saying that, like I ran a marathon over in Galway a couple of years ago, and like I have a 2:36 marathon. So I'm not bad on the road either. Like, you know?
Jesus Christ.
Yeah. But I'm mad. Like I'd love to try again and go for a sub 2:30 or like a 2:30 marathon. But at the minute, I'm just going well in the trails and things are going really well. So I'm going to stick with the trails for another few years and see where that goes. But definitely will come back to a marathon because, like, look, it's all running. And I love running on the roads. I love running the trails. You know, it doesn't bother me. I'll run anywhere, man.
What's next? What's the next goal for you?
Yeah, so my race plans are kind of in place for next year, and Art O'Neill is number one. So I'm doing Art O'Neill 12th of January. Brilliant. So that's what I'm training for right now. Really looking forward to that race because I think it's a proper mountain race in Ireland, steeped in history. So I'm really looking forward to that. And then I'm going over then to Istria, so over in Croatia, to do Istria 100K in April. And then I'm going back to TDS. So I'll be doing TDS at UTMB this year, which is last year it ended up 152K with 9,800 meters of climbing, something like that.
Whoa.
Yeah, and I like and every year you got to give yourself goals and you got to believe, right? And like at the minute, I kind of want a top 10 finish in Istria and I want a top 10 finish in TDS as well. So it'll be all guns blazing for a good 2024, you know.
Unbelievable. Final question before we wrap up, because obviously you're very prominent on Instagram and stuff like that. When you see other runners and stuff, is there something there that you constantly hear about running or trail running that you're like, nope, I'm not getting into a rant with them, but that is absolutely not true. That is not the case with running. Is there any kind of pet peeves you have with that with Instagram at the moment, or any social media where you're like, that's not the way it is, or I made my mistakes through that, or did, like, for example, maybe it is everyone's like hop on the bike all the time, like, nah, just stick with the roads or whatever it is.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure. That's a tough one to answer. Like the only thing that annoys me sometimes about Instagram is people that do a lot of talking and they don't back it up with actual work, you know. Like that's one thing that I think if you follow me and you hear me saying keep showing up, right? Like I'm not saying keep showing up and then going back to bed. Like I'm keep showing up and I'm putting the work in. And I think that transparency is the thing. Like I want to be as transparent as possible. And if I follow somebody else on Instagram, I want them to be as honest and transparent as possible, because there is a lot of people out there that are saying one thing and doing another thing, you know, and they're not backing it up and they're not telling the truth. So like that's one thing that annoys me about social media in some ways. But other than that, like, you know, it's a great platform for, especially for runners, for trail runners, road runners. You know, it's a great way to build your profile and get your name out there. And I've had nothing but, like, when I first started getting into Instagram and talking on it, I hated it. I really hated it. But people were messaging me back and saying, look, that whatever you said the last day, it got me up and running, it got me out the door. And like, it's grown since that. And I've had nothing but love from most of my followers. You know, I might have had like one or two comments in the last 6 years that were negative. And I mean, that's not bad. That's not bad.
That's a very good batting average there. That was actually going to be a follow-up question. Have you got much of that? And obviously you haven't.
No, no. Like I think like especially in the trail running scene and the road running scene, like we're all out there doing the same thing. We've all got the same goals, like different goals, but I mean, we're all looking for the same thing. We're looking for motivation. We're looking for positivity all the time. So it's very, very rare that you see negative stuff coming across on that platform. You know, it's not like fashion or it's not like this, that, or the other. You know, this is kind of people just trying to do well for themselves, do well for their friends, do well for their families, you know, and I see that shine through on Instagram really.
It is one thing that I think kind of is like a safety net, because in most cases, most people, if they can walk, they can run, and when they see people doing something extraordinary with something that is attainable, if you're going to your car, you can get a run in, and seeing the lengths that people go to, because I think everyone wants to be able to run over a mountain. I want to be able to do it. Am I going to have the same commitment as Ricki? No, because I love me Chinese and me beer too much. You know, like, and that's my transparency. It's like, I wish I could have your ability, but I know I'm not going to put in the work to get to that level or have that commitment. And I think that's why there can't really be negativity, because there's an appreciation for what you've sacrificed over the last few years to get to that level. And that's where I'm like, I don't know if I'm willing to sacrifice that much to be at that level, to be that good. And that's why when Ricki's saying show up, you're like, Jesus Christ, I better get me runners on.
You know,
like, yeah. Well, like that's what I try and put across. I try and, like, sometimes it might come across that I'm being grumpy or giving out, but like I'm trying to tell people that I'm out in the piss and rain all day at work, right? And then I go home and I'm out in the piss and rain running around in the dark. And if I can do it, I'm telling you, if I can do it, anybody can do it, you know, and that's kind of what I'm trying to put across. But also on the flip side of that, like we say, people might see me run, like they might see me run a 100K race in 9 or 10 hours. Right? Go, oh, that's unbelievable. That's incredible. Like he just ran that in whatever 9 or 10 hours. But I see somebody else that signs up for a race of the same distance, knowing that they're going to be 25 hours. Like, yeah. I know that I'm going to be like 9-10 hours, and then on a bad day it'll probably be 11 or 12. But I can deal with that. But if you told me that that's going to take me 25 hours, I don't know about that. I don't think I'm going to do that. Whereas when these people are signing up to those races knowing it's going to take them at least 25 hours, I think that's a hell of a lot tougher than what I'm doing, you know?
There is an admiration for those people who know it's going to be a slog from step one. You know, it's going to be difficult from step one. They're not going to be enjoying it or have such a spring in their step that you have, and it's a different kind of mental battle, and the admiration is there for them. And you can see it even in the marathons and other races that somebody's 10K is their ultra. You know, that's hell of a lot out
totally.
of them.
Yeah.
I was thinking, hello, and hold that pause for that.
and breathe.
I just want you to just contemplate how far you're away from us wrapping up the podcast and going back to your bowl of vegetables and chili sauce on top. Well, Eric's contemplating ringing a Chinese and having a few beers. But Ricki, it's been absolutely fantastic having you on the podcast. It's just an absolute inspiration. Best luck with those races next year. I will say I'm not too jealous of you doing Art O'Neill. I was in the lottery this year and I was kind of happy I did not get it after I got on last year. Just brush up your navigation skills is all I was saying. You'll have a lot more time in the mountain to get lost than I had, but brush up on that and you'll absolutely crush it, mate.
Yeah, cheers. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to Art. Like, I can't even read a map. That's you want transparency. I'm doing Art O'Neill, which is a nav race. I don't do nav and I can't read a map. I'd be as well off looking at the back of a book than looking at a map. But I will recce the hell out of it, and I'll know every blade of grass that's in it. And that's how I'll approach it. And I'm really looking forward to it. You know, it's like, I think it's such a cool race. It's a really rich in history race in Ireland, and I think it's a big one, I think. So I'm hoping I do well in Art O'Neill now.
It's a fantastic race, and it's almost one of those you kind of hope the worse weather the better, just because of how much it is rich in history. You've seen those, don't know if you've seen the photos a couple of years ago, where it's like during the snow, people come up the mountains, like, yeah, that's what that race is really all about. But absolutely best luck with that, and keep going on the Instagram, keep showing up as you keep saying. It's class, Ricki. Thank you very much, and that's pretty much it for the podcast. Myself, Ricki, and Eric. Take care.